Hi, everyone. Thank you for having me. I'm delighted to be here. I was here 5 years ago at the celebration of the opening of the MOOCs and XuetangX, and it's my great pleasure to be here. Let's see if we can get this going. Whoops. Okay, so for those of you who are unaware of what edX is all about, we are the leading online nonprofit education platform in the world. edX came about through the collaboration between Harvard and MIT back in 2012. Like you all, we recently celebrated our 5th year anniversary as well. Tsinghua was one of the first Asian universities to partner with edX, along with XuetangX and Beida. And we also have a number of universities that are part of the edX platform that come from Hong Kong. So edX is, we think about our impact, our global impact, and our reach along 2 vectors. One is through edX.org, which is represented by the collaboration of Harvard and MIT and the 140 some odd partners that have joined edX since our inception 5 years ago. We've reached almost 20 million learners on edX.org, and of those 20 million learners, they've enrolled in about 62 million courses. While the number of students that are eligible for credit are not quite as impressive as the 11 million here in China, we still are very proud of the 25,000 that we actually have on the edX platform. And we saw explosive growth in the number of courses over the years, and we came to 2,000, and we've sort of tapered off for now, and we're really focused on taking those courses and turning them into programs, which I'll talk about shortly. So the other vector that we think about edX on is along the open source, our impact through edX being an open source platform. So back in 2012, in the summer of 2012, through collaboration and assistance by Stanford University, edX became an open source platform. It was one of the probably smartest things that edX could have done outside of forming as a nonprofit that was very much aligned with the university's values. But we are also the only open source platform and a nonprofit to boot. So through the combination of edX and edX.org and the open source platforms that exist, of which Xuetang is part of, we've reached about 40 million learners, best we can tell. We don't have an exact number. There are about 900 educational institutions, and that number just keeps growing. It goes up pretty steep. That are using the platform for their own use, and that represents, like I said, about another 20 million learners. So I was very, very fortunate. There's a picture of a cake that I had the great fortune of cutting with Nia and Li Chao back in March. I happened to be in Beijing visiting with people, and they were celebrating achieving 10 million learners at that time, and it's since gone up to 14 million, I believe. It has been a very, very important strategic partnership for edX. It was one of the first platforms that was what we call back at the office a country platform. So there's a number of countries that have adopted the open edX platform as their platform from for education in their country. Xuetang being one here in China. There's one in Jordan, there's one in Malaysia, there's one in Russia, and there's one in France. The list goes on. We really do believe that Open edX should be the platform that education ministries around the world can really benefit from, because then there can be great collaboration between the countries. Xuetang itself actually also helped edX expand our reach in China specifically through an agreement where we license courses to Xuetang, they translate them and then run them for the Chinese students. That's helped us reach something about 650,000 Chinese students that otherwise probably would not have been able to take the courses because they were in English or other languages. And those courses come from the great institutions such as MIT and Berkeley. So it's been a really great partnership for us over these past 4 years. I was asked to talk about some of the trends that edX is seeing. So I'm going to talk about the 3 goals that our founding CEO, Professor Anant Agarwal, who is from MIT and he is the founder of edX, sort of has challenged both edX and edX's partners to achieve over the course of the next 4 years. These were originally 5-year goals, but we're a year into it. They're around the concepts of modular education, omni-channel education, and lifelong learning. And then I'm going to talk about a very important trend that we're seeing emerging in the changing landscape of credit. So edX is very much devoted to creating a fully modular model for education. Oops, sorry about that. And what we're doing is we, as a platform, as well as other organizations are trying to do this too, is to create mezzanine credentials that for bachelor's and master's degrees and unbundling those degrees. I'll talk a little bit more in detail about how we have done that with something that we call a micromasters and professional masters. We're working very, very hard both with universities, employers, and governments to recognize these credentials as something that are as powerful as what would be just a traditional degree. And we're also working with and through our partners on credit exchanges. And we've sort of set as an objective that 25% of credit should be coming from external institutions in 4 years' time for anyone that's matriculating on campus or online for that matter. And the way that we do this is we are truly a platform-based organization. So we have the content suppliers, which are universities and a few NGOs and a few corporations. And we do it by partnering with the best-in-class organizations throughout the world, much like the universities represented here. So one of the first things, or one of the first forays into modular education that has really caught on and been very, very successful for edX and our partners is this thing called a micromasters credential. We launched this about 2 years ago, and much to our great, great surprise and pleasure, a very large number of institutions jumped on and created micromasters credentials. So at this point, 2 years in, or about 18 months in, there's about 52 programs from 25 universities worldwide. And what these credentials are is it's a standalone credential on itself, and it is really focused towards in-demand career-related topics. But it has a pathway to credit. So the schools that offer the micromasters will, for students that apply and are accepted into their professional master's degree programs, those students will receive anywhere from 25 to 50% credit for their entire program from their online micromasters. This does a bunch of things. It helps the learners fit getting a degree into their life because it's online, it's much more flexible. It allows them to accelerate once they take the master's program through that program because they've covered off 25 to 50% online through the micromasters. And then finally, they do it at a fraction of the cost. So the very first micromasters was from MIT. Not surprising, MIT is often a leader in innovation for edX, at least. And it was in supply chain, it was a supply chain master's. The micromasters constituted 50% of the degree, and it eliminated about 50% of the cost of the final master's degree. So it's been a very, very successful program for MIT, for edX, and for the learners. I've listed just a few of the universities here that have participated. Like I said, there's 25 of them and growing. But don't just take it from me that these have been very successful. These are just two examples of learners' stories where micromasters has touched their lives. On the left is a young man named Amal. Amal took courses from MIT, managed to get into MIT, and has since graduated, achieved his desire to become a computer scientist and works at Facebook in Cambridge, Massachusetts, in the United States. And similarly, the young lady on the right, her name is Mia. She took the micromasters as a mezzanine credential with no expectation or desire to go on and get her degree. She was really trying to take her career to the next level, and through a successful completion of the supply chain micromasters from MIT, she managed to change her job and achieve the next step in her career as a data scientist. These are just two examples of many, many, many stories that we have about the success of these credentials. So we have a mezzanine credential called micromasters, and I'm pleased to announce here, 12 hours ahead of the United States, that it is certainly modular into traditional masters on campus at universities, but in about 12 hours' time in the United States, I think that's about right, edX will be announcing actually online master's degrees on edX. So micromasters today, many of them lead to campus degrees, and in the future they will also be able to lead into online degrees on edX. So that announcement, please look for it this evening or tomorrow morning, your time, our time. And we are launching something like 8 to 10 master's degrees from about 6 different institutions on edX. And so how does and those master's degrees sort of follow our normal way in which we think about disrupting education, right? So we're, first of all, working with top-ranked universities and top programs. They're online, and they're meant to be very flexible, and they're priced in such a way to provide a greater degree of access. So in the case of online master's degrees, they are typically half the cost of a degree at a traditional degree. So how does the modularity work? So if you look from left to right, it stacks. So there are courses. Courses make up a micromaster's. A micromaster's is part of a full master's degree program. If you look at it from right to left, it unbundles it. You take this big master's program that's made up of a bunch of courses. You can bring it down to a unit of a micromaster's credential, or you can even bring it further down to the unit of a course. So we're pretty excited about this, and like I said, there's going to be a big announcement tomorrow. How did we get here? edX has a long tradition of piloting or doing experimentation. We've already heard about the computer science degree from Georgia Tech. This was another degree that Georgia Tech, and that one they put on a different platform. This is one of 2 degree programs on the edX platform from Georgia Tech, and it was very disruptive in that it provides access to one of the top degrees as rated by worldwide, like top 10 degrees in analytics. And you can complete it online for $10,000 US, actually slightly less. That's been very, very successful. It has been around for 3 quarters now, or 3 semesters now, and there's 1,000 students across 3 cohorts in this program, and that we expect will grow to 4,000 students per year enrolling in this program. Likewise, modularity allows for the sharing of content. So this is just one example of many where another university, another institution, in this case ITU in Pakistan, is using the MicroMasters from edX and the University of California, San Diego in data science. And that MicroMasters program was a foundational element of their full degree at ITU in Pakistan. So what's next for us? We are led by a leader, Anant Agarwal, I mentioned him earlier, who has a great deal of energy, and we're never allowed to rest on our success. And so what's up next for us are a similar version to MicroMasters, but at the bachelor's or the undergraduate degree level. And we are well on our way with doing that. First piloting with Arizona State University with their something called Global Freshman Academy, where there are general education, freshman year level undergraduate courses on edX that anyone can take. They're admissions, agnostic, admissions free. And then once you get into Arizona State or any college that accepts those credits in the United States, then you can convert that to credit. We're going to codify what we've done with ASU, and we're going to be moving towards a micro-bachelor's model that will cover off probably 25% of the degree online at a deeply, deeply discounted price than what you can get if you were to go on campus. The second goal that Anant has actually shared as a motivational goal over the course of the next 4 to 5 years is really like, how do we think about the delivery of education? And we think about it in 3 ways. Education before you get to campus, education while you're on campus, and education after campus. The last one sort of leads into the third goal, and I'll talk about that in a moment. So I already talked about MicroMasters a little bit. So this is before campus, right? You can take these courses online in your own time. You can demonstrate to yourself that you could be successful in the program. You could use the credential as a standalone credential, however, whatever works for your educational needs. Online while on campus, these are just 2 examples of what's happening. There are thousands of other examples like this across the edX, all edX partners, where they're actually using the MOOC on campus, and they create a cohort for their students. And what they've found, or at least in these 2 examples, MIT and Georgia Tech, one's a circuits course, another is a computer science, I think it's Python. is that the students on campus love this method of taking a course. It's very, very flexible. It is less stressful for them. And in both cases, they've either seen comparable or better results than the people that were taking the courses in a more traditional lecture format or completely in person, no online component. And again, we have thousands of examples of this across the 140 universities that are using edX today. And for us, online education or online after campus, we're really focused on, and you may have experienced this yourself, creating another credential called a professional certificate. And what we've experienced with learners is, while they enjoy taking a course, they actually like to take a series of courses and gain competency in a very specific subject. And similar to the MicroMasters, we launched this about, I don't know, 3 or 4 months after the MicroMasters, and we've seen really great success. The learners have told us that they've met their expectations, that they've helped them further their professional objectives. So that kind of bleeds into the third goal that Anant has set, which is around lifelong learning and creating a platform that supports that with the collaboration with our partners. While MicroMasters has been very, very successful, Professional Certificates is likewise very successful, and there's actually even more programs. So we're at about 50 some odd MicroMasters programs. At this point, we're at 80 Professional Certificate programs. That's partly due to the fact that they're a little bit easier to create because they're usually smaller. We work with our both with our learners and with our university partners to create programs that are in-demand career-related fields, and that they have distinct career pathways associated with them. Excuse me. So professional certificate programs are very similar to MicroMasters in that they are a collection of courses, and however, they're very different in that they do not provide a pathway to credit. It's a terminal credential, and it's one that's really focused on career outcomes. And because they are designed for the busy working professional, they're usually shorter and that therefore easier to make on the university side. So the pathway to employment, we work with the universities and corporations to ensure that that pathway exists. And we've had really great experience working with Berkeley and Google, for instance, on their data science program, or the University of Hong Kong and Standard Charter for a program in financial technology. So I said I would say a little bit about credit. And we saw what we're seeing the credit landscape change quite significantly. We see it from, we work with the Department of Education in the United States. We hear a lot from them, and they're encouraging us to really push new models for how credit is exchanged. We're also seeing a lot of organic things coming from our university partners. And one of the first things that we saw organically from university partners was with the MicroMasters. Almost from the very beginning, other edX institutions contacted us or the universities offering the MicroMasters and asked if they could actually offer credit for the programs within, for the MicroMasters within their programs on campus. So I gave you this example of supply chain only because it has the most number of peer or other institutions offering credit for that credential, and they have 6, and it ranges from places in the US, Central America, Australia, and so forth. And this happened rather organically. It wasn't something that edX had necessarily pushed. And I would say a vast majority of all MicroMasters either have cross or credit exchanges with other universities, or they are in the works of having those. So how it works is a learner takes a supply chain master's program, and then that credential is recognized by any number of other universities into other programs. So for instance, an interesting one for me is the University of Queensland is accepting credit for the supply chain MicroMasters within their Masters of Business. So it's a Masters of Business with a concentration on supply chain or perhaps manufacturing. Of course, MIT recognizes their own MicroMasters for credit. And then another example is Curtin University recognizes it as well. But like I said, there's 6 universities plus MIT that recognizes credit for that program. Another organic thing that has cropped up amongst the edX partners is something called the Virtual Exchange Global Alliance. It's kind of a mouthful. And this is like creating a way for students at one campus to take courses from another university without ever leaving their home campus. So think of it this way. I'm a student at, I think, HKUST is part of this exchange program, and I want to take a computer science course at Rice University in Texas in the United States. I never leave my campus. I take the MOOC, and I get credit for it at HKUST. I think that there's they are up to 13 universities that are edX partners that are part of this exchange program, and it's one that we are happy to support. So I do have to just say a little bit about edX. We are committed to continuously improving the platform. And we really believe that we are a leader in teaching and learning tools. We devote a great deal of resources, engineering, product, and financial resources to enhancing the platform. The benefit of being open source is that there's also another ecosystem of engineers that are contributing code that gets back into the platform. I think what you'll see from us, or I should say I know what you'll see from us in the coming months and probably the next year or so, will be enhancements to the platform that really support active project-based social learning that will help propel the online masters that we're about to announce. So we've got some pretty lofty goals as set by our founder and CEO, Anand. I know I have the great honor to work with all of the university partners, and I know that they're all behind most of these goals, if not all of these goals. And I think the Vice President said earlier today that the next 5 years for China MOOC is that you need to be bold and help redesign or design education for the digital native, and we are basically asking our partners to do the same thing. We need to be bold, we need to be able to take risks, we need to experiment, and we need to just keep pushing sort of some of the conventional and traditional ideas that have been around for a long time. So I thank you very much for your time, and I'd be happy to chat with you about any of this. I'll be around. Thanks.